Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. A little late with this video. I had it filmed, didn't have the time or energy to get it edited, but thankfully this set is still in stock. This is another one of the STAMPtember limited edition exclusive collab stamp sets, and this is with SugarPea Designs, and it's the Everyday Home stamp set, and I just loved it. Like, really loved it. So, yeah, getting this up before it's too late. Hopefully by the time it's all, said and done. So I took a bunch of images from the set and I stamped them onto Simon's smooth white cardstock with intense black ink. Once they were stamped, I did some very simple Copic coloring. Honestly, some of it was just messy. I wasn't too worried about it. I'm trying so much harder now to just go with the flow and not overthink it and not worry about it too much. Like I've said in other videos, perfection is overrated big time. So kept coloring simple, stuck with kind of cooler wood tones. I don't know. I was coloring it with like things I would pick out if I was doing, some little like home decor. Although as I was like doing this, I was like, I've always wanted like blanket ladders. I think they're just, I don't know. The basic white girl in me. It's like, ooh, a blanket ladder. I can't have those things in my house. My kids would they would just trash the walls if we did that. It just, yeah. Blankets stay in piles around here. Someday I will have a nice little blanket ladder where I can have all my, blankets and throws and things just nicely displayed between use. So anywho, I colored everything. I purposely left the lampshade and the blanket. I did not color those because I'm going to do some paper piecing. I think that's another reason why I loved this set so much, because I was like, ooh, I can do some paper piecing with this, give things some pattern and have some fun with it. So also, and potted plants. I love plants. I would love to have more house plants. I kill practically everything. I have one plant that so far seems to be thriving. It's one of those, is it a snake plant? Is that what you call it? I've mentioned this in another video at one point, but it is neglected. It is neglected and it's thriving. I wish all houseplants could be like that, because then I would have a house full. Anywho, did all my coloring with the Copic markers of all of the main parts, and then I trimmed them out. And then I pulled out Honeybee's Harvest Festival pattern paper that I have been hoarding for a very long time. I hoard all their pattern papers, even though I'm on the Honeybee design team and I can, I can get more. I got problems. Anyway, I pulled out this paper because the colors were perfect, one, for this time of year, and also just there was several patterns that I was like, ooh, yeah. So I totally didn't realize I was like, still zoomed super in, but it doesn't matter. I was just stamping. There's a couple little cushions in the stamp set, as well as the lampshade and that little blanket on the ladder. I stamped those onto just different patterns in this pack with the same black ink. I was just using little acrylic blocks and kind of picking out areas that I thought would work on these. So I'm going to have some patterned throw pillows, of course, and then the lampshade and the blanket. So I stamp them first. I do a rough trim out with my scissors just to get it out of the paper pack rather than pull out each individual paper, because if I can keep them in the paper pad longer, it just makes life easier, so I don't have pieces falling out, that sort of a thing. And this also makes everything coordinate. I used to get asked that a lot back in the day when I used to use a lot more pattern paper. People used to always ask, like, how do you get patterns to match up so well? And I was like, well, I always use them from the same pack. So they're already designed to work together. They already have coordinating colors and patterns and all the things, and it just makes life easier. So I trimmed all those pieces out with my scissors, like cut right on the line. And then I went over the edges with my Memento TUXEDO block marker that just covers up that white exposed edge of the pattern paper and makes everything a little more seamless. And then with the lampshade and the blanket, I adhered them right on top of the main stamped images. And then the biggest thing with paper piecing is adding shading. It grounds everything. It, brings it in with everything else. Because otherwise, the pattern paper piece is just floating there. It doesn't make any sense. So I like to use warm gray markers almost always with my shading. And I'm not too particular with it. I went a little extra on the pillows just to give them that bit of, you know, dimension and fluff so that they don't look like flat pieces. So I just kind of scribbled in the areas where I, you know, again, not really thinking about like light sources or anything like that. I just wanted to add that bit of shading because it gives them life. You know, the whole Laura Baslin dimension is life. Same idea. Shading is also life. And yet I don't really follow the rules with the shading and the highlights and that sort of thing. But, you know, just, yeah. Anyway. After I did all my shading, set all that aside, to create my little scene, I used a wood plank wafer die, which apparently isn't available anymore. I thought it was, and then I went to link to it and it's gone. So I'll link to a similar one by like Memory Box that is an awesome little wafer die set. It's always nice to have like something wood planky sort of when card making, because you can do scenes like this. They work for a bajillion different things, you know. So I adhered the pieces together just with some Spellbinders tape, so I don't have to fiddle so much. And then I cut them on an angle, and then I'm adhering them to just a thin piece of scrap white cardstock. That's going to be just my base to create my like room. So I had the wood plank on like the floor. You could also use pattern paper to do this because there's tons of wood pattern papers. In fact, there was probably one in the pack as well. But anyway, the other thing I did was I die cut some white cardstock with Simon's Strips 2 wafer dies. These came out last year. And you could technically just trim pieces of cardstock. However, the pressure cut edge on a wafer die works especially nice for this. Like, it literally makes it look like shiplap, which again, basic white girl here. I'm like, oh, you know, I wanted shiplap in my house, but just things weren't meant to be. Someday maybe. Because I love it. The shiplap with like natural wood floors, and I'm just, yeah. You guys, this is why I love set, like interior design, that sort of thing. I love it. I'm not good on it. And also I have many, many children. So a lot of things, it's like, I'm not going to invest really good money in like quality furniture and nice things that are all going to get broken. So anyway, I can do this with stamps though, you know, and play with my heart's content and design and decorate, and it makes me happy. So that's what I did. I created a little scene with the images. I glued them down with a mix of craft tacky glue and 2 different thicknesses of foam squares, you know, just to build up that bit of dimension. And then for my sentiment, I decided to just make this a thank you card, because that's what my favorite cards to make and my most used is thank you cards. I didn't have the right shade of cardstock. I wanted this kind of aqua color to go, you know, with the card. So the easiest way to work around that is to make my own. So I took a piece of white cardstock and scribbled one of the Copic markers onto it heavily, like fully saturated this cardstock, because I just wanted a nice smooth finish of that color. And then before I do anything with it, I made sure, like I used my heat tool actually to make sure it was dry. And then I double check always. I use my anti-static powder tool, and then I pour the embossing powder right over it to make sure it's not going to cling to everything before I even start stamping. And then the sentiment is from this Simon Says Stamp XL Greetings 3 set that came out at the beginning of the month that I've been raving about since the set was released. I've used it already how many times? And I'm going to use the same like go-to sentiment on the inside too, because I told you guys when I showed the stamp set, I was like, I will be using this a lot. So anyway, I stamped the thanks stamp onto that with clear embossing ink, brushed off just a few little strays that decided to cling around, and then I'm going to melt that with my heat tool. And then I'm going to use the coordinating wafer die to die cut this sentiment. And then once it's die cut, I just popped on with the foam square since they were sitting right there and I use them for everything else. Otherwise, I would normally just die cut scraps with the same thanks wafer die, you know, and stack them that way. Whatever works for you. So I got all that adhered. And then on the inside of the card, like I said, I'm using this stamp from that same set that says you just make things better. Like this stamp is already starting to get like seriously stained because I use it so much. I love it. So I inked that up with Simon's Cobblestone ink, the ink that I use generally for stamping on Nina Desert Storm. It also looks very nice on white. It's just a really nice like grayish sort of color. So stamp that. And then I adhered my card front to my card base. And that was it. This was seriously, and I know some people will be like, oh my gosh, like no splatter, no bling. No, the splatter and the bling don't work with a card like this. You know, I could have put in some splatter and bling, but I kind of liked how it turned out regardless. It was just fun. And again, if I had more hours in the day, I would have like stamped a bajillion of these images and just had fun like decorating, you know, making little scenes and stuff like that. So as always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. I'll link to all of the supplies I used, all that stuff will be in the description box below the video if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching, for subscribing, for thumbs upping, for commenting, all of it. I very much appreciate all of you, and I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye!